Okay, so we ran out of sugar-free ketchup. This really isn't a big deal in my house because if you watched my show before, you know that I cook everything from scratch. So just as you can imagine, I have a really great, easy, keto, sugar-free ketchup recipe, and I'm going to share it with you today. I'm Tim. Welcome to my kitchen. Now, of course, I could just go to the grocery store and buy ketchup like pretty much everybody else, but let me show you some stuff. Here we're in the ketchup aisle at my grocery store, and you can see there are lots of different choices. The thing you want to do is if you're buying ketchup is you want to read the label and you want to read it carefully. Here's one that I found that says, and I like Heinz ketchup, or I did when I was a kid, so this seems like a good choice, no sugar added. And let's have a look. Here on the back, we've got the nutritional information. That's the macros, basically. And what you see here is they have per serving, and their serving is a tablespoon. Per 16 grams per tablespoon, it has 10 calories and 1 gram of net carbs. And this is a 13-ounce bottle. It costs $2.49 US. My sugar-free ketchup has half the calories and about half the carbs of theirs. And let's have a look at that label one more time. Check out the ingredients. Notice that one of the ingredients here is sucralose. If you're on the keto diet, you want to avoid any artificial sweetener that ends in the letters OSE, like maltose or dextrose. Sucralose is not good for you. It can spike your insulin and kick you out of ketosis, so avoid it. I'm going to use stevia, so we won't be having that problem here. And I make twice as much for quite a bit less, 26 ounces, for less than $2. Anyway, this is a super easy recipe. Let me show you. We start off here with one 28-ounce can, that's 793 grams of crushed tomatoes or diced tomatoes. You could really use tomato puree as well. Don't use tomato sauce here. That's already seasoned in a way that we really don't want. Anyway, here I've got a can of crushed tomatoes, and to it I'm going to add a number of ingredients. And now don't be frightened by the list of ingredients here, but there are quite a few. In fact, that's the thing we love about ketchup, is the complexity of flavors. Not so much that it's tomatoey, but that it has a lot of other stuff going on here. Starts off with 1 teaspoon of onion powder. I'm using onion powder instead of fresh onion because it has many fewer carbs for the flavor. I'm also going to add in a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. Get all that in there. And next, a half a cup, that's 125 milliliters of apple cider vinegar. You could also use white vinegar here, that would be fine. Stir that in. 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I use kosher salt. If you use table salt, you might want to use a little bit less and just taste it. And now some flavorings that are really typical of most ketchups. First of all, a half teaspoon of celery seed. Stir that in. 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. 1/8 teaspoon of ground clove. Don't let it stick to the sides. That's why I'm using a whisk. It's easiest to incorporate it that way. And here I've got 1/8 teaspoon as well of ground allspice. I'm also going to add in 1 bay leaf and of course some sweetener. Here I'm going to use organic powdered stevia. This is 1.5 teaspoons of that. It's the equivalent of about, in sweetness that is, of about a half a cup of sugar. You add whatever sweetener in whatever quantity you like. And to thicken this up, finally, I'm going to add in, and this is optional, but to thicken it up easily, I'm going to add in a half a teaspoon of xanthan gum. Give it a good stir. And now I'm going to turn on the flame here at a medium-low. We don't want it too high. We don't want to burn this. And if you've worked with tomato sauce before, you know that it has a tendency to burn on the bottom if you go too quickly, so go slow. And stir frequently. To speed it up just a little bit here, I'm going to put the lid on and wait a good 5 minutes and come back, give it a nice stir. After about 5 minutes, it looks like this, and it's just starting to come to a boil. What we want to do is turn the heat down to low and let this simmer very slowly for 35, 45, maybe 50 minutes until it's the thickness that we want. I'm also going to leave the lid off so the liquid can evaporate from it. Stir it frequently, about every 5 minutes at least. Now here's what it looks like after about 50 minutes. This is nice and rich and thick. You can see it piles up nicely just like that. And this is when I'm going to turn off the flame and I'm going to remove this from the heat and allow it to cool a little bit before I put it in mason jars. But before I do that, two things. First, let's remove the bay leaf and toss that. We really don't want that in our ketchup. Now, the other thing is, and this is optional, but I think it's nice. I used crushed tomatoes for my ketchup, and it's a little rough. It doesn't have that perfectly smooth texture, so I'm going to run it through the blender really quick. And from there into our mason jar. Let's check it out. You can see again, look at how pretty that is. Just get a little bit on my spoon. Oh, that is so delicious. The spices in it are really alive. It's very tangy from the vinegar. Of course, the tomatoes, it's delicious. I really love this ketchup. It's why I make it really about once a month or so. And I hope you'll try it. Here we are back out in the garden to end the show. Let's talk macros before we go. For the entire recipe, it turns out like this. 309.4 calories, 30.2 grams of net carbs, 13.8 grams of protein, and just 1/4 gram of fat, so really not much fat. Per portion, and I'm going to use the portion size of the Heinz bottle that we started with, that would be 1 tablespoon, and this was 26 ounces, so that makes 52 servings. Each ounce is 2 tablespoons. Each tablespoon has 5.9 calories, 0.6 gram of net carbs, 0.3 gram of protein, and no fat to speak of at all. Listen, thanks so much for joining us here today at Tim Talks Cooking, huh? We'll catch you next time.